The sky tore open at 3:17 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. A single streak of fire broke the quiet night, arcing above the Atlantic Ocean like a falling star. Except this was no meteor. It didn't burn. It didn't fade. It slowed. It hovered. Then it spoke. Every screen on Earth, phones, satellites, laptops, billboards, even digital watches, blinked black for a heartbeat. Then a symbol appeared, a golden circle split by a silver line. Below it, a single voice echoed in every language known to man, and a few humanity had never heard before. It was calm, cold, absolute. People of Earth, you are primitive but resourceful. A danger, not just to yourselves, but to all intelligent life. You have been observed, judged, and now you are given one choice. Submit to Thaurak's dominion, kneel, and be preserved. Refuse, and you will be reduced to ash. One galactic cycle. That is all. The message repeated every 6 minutes. On every screen, in every tongue. No one could turn it off. Above Earth, the source of the message came into view, a ship so large it blocked out the stars. Its surface was smooth, dark like onyx, with glowing veins of golden energy that pulsed like a living thing. It made no sound, but the air itself seemed to hum, as if the planet's very gravity was disturbed by its presence. They called it the Dread Carrier. It had no weapons pointed outward. It didn't need them. Just the shape, the silence, the shadow it cast, that was enough. Panic swept the world. In Washington, Moscow, Beijing, New Delhi, and London, emergency sessions began, but nothing could be decided. There were no demands, no terms to negotiate. Just one word, Neil. Some thought it was a joke. Others feared. A rogue AI, but deep within Earth's defense networks. Something far older stirred. Something built for this exact moment. On a moonless night buried beneath Greenland's ice shelf, base-long thought decommissioned blinked back to life. Inside it, a single man stepped forward. Admiral Grant Harlow, 64 years old, former commander of Earth Space Command, now recalled to duty without explanation. He stood before a row of frozen launch tubes and whispered, "So it begins." The Thauraks didn't know this. Couldn't have known, but Earth had been listening to. 22 years ago, a deep space satellite detected a broken alien signal. It spoke of a growing empire, worlds burned to nothing, races folded into something called the Dominion. The message was ignored by most. But a few believed. A secret alliance of scientists, engineers, and war veterans was born in silence, under the name Project Dominion Reversal. Their plan was simple: if Earth was ever found, and given no way out, they would strike first. Now the countdown had begun. All across the world, civilian life cracked at the seams. Economies halted. Riots flared. Religious leaders called it the end times. Social media drowned in fear. But the people inside Project Dominion worked in complete silence. Underneath, oceans. Behind the moon, and deep beneath old Cold War bunkers. Something massive began to stir. The fleet. Not just warships. Earth's vengeance made metal. Ships designed not just to fly, but to erase. Each vessel had no name painted on its hull. No markings, no color. They were black. Matte black. Built from materials scavenged from meteorites and reverse-engineered. Alien tech. The project had taken decades, hidden from governments, funded by off-grid science coalitions and billionaires who no longer believed Earth would survive diplomacy. Now, the fleet was ready. Back in orbit, the Dread Carrier drifted in silence. No weapons fired. No fleets followed. It didn't need to fight. The Thauraks were confident. They had done this 100 times before. Single ship was all it took. Most species bowed within hours. The few that fought back lasted days, a week at most. Earth would be no different. That's what the data said. That's what history proved. But the Thauraks didn't understand Earth's history, because Earth was not a peaceful world. Earth was forged in fire and blood. Every nation, every people, Every civilization had known war. It was not something humanity loved, but it was something they understood. And more importantly, they never forgot. In a sealed command room buried under NORAD, President Elena Carter stared at the alien message playing again on the main screen. Her hands were clasped behind her back. Around her, generals whispered. Advisors argued. Satellites spun equations. She listened to none of them. She simply said, "Launch it." No one questioned her, not in that room, not on that day. And so in a dozen hidden places across the globe, launch sequences began. Eye cores activated. Pilots emerged from cryosleep. Orbital docks turned their shields toward the sun and unfolded solar arrays. The Dominion fleet, Earth's ghost armada, came to life, not with noise, but with cold efficiency. These were ships no one on Earth had ever seen. Not even their own builders had witnessed them all in one place. There were over 100 warships, 5 capital destroyers, 3 carriers, 2 planetary siege platforms, and 1 ship simply called Oblivion. Its purpose was classified. No one even knew who built it. Now it would lead at 22:04 GMT. Earth sent its answer. A narrowband signal. It's not flashy, not long, just for words. Earth does not kneel. The alien ship did not respond. Its golden veins pulsed once, twice. Then, the stars around it began to move. The Thalrax had lied. It wasn't just one ship from behind the shadows of Mars and Saturn. Dozens more began to emerge. Dark like obsidian, shaped like spears and crescents and blades. A hidden fleet, waiting, watching. Earth had not been given one day. It had been given bait. And now, trap it closed. But Earth didn't flinch. Inside the bridge of Oblivion, Admiral Harlow watched as the enemy ships surrounded Earth. His face was stone, his voice calm. "They're bigger," he said. "They're faster, older, meaner." He looked at his crew, scientists, outcasts, warriors, orphans, and gave the only order that mattered. "But they're not us. Prepare for total war." And in that moment, across every ship, every channel, every cockpit, the fleet moved, not in panic, not in fear, but in unison. Because when the stars gave Earth one chance to kneel, Earth didn't beg. Earth answered with fire, and the galaxy would never forget what came next. Above Earth, the stars no longer looked the same. What once shimmered as peaceful lights in the sky had turned into cold watchers, marking the arrival of a force older and far crueler than any nightmare humans had ever imagined. The Thalrax. Fleet, sleek, black, silent, now surrounded the planet in a perfect arc. Dozens of ships, shaped like daggers and razors, shimmered with that same golden energy seen on the dread carrier. They made no noise, no movement, as if waiting for Earth to beg. But Earth did not kneel. Instead, in shadows and silence, its answer prepared to rise. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, the water began to tremble. At first it was barely a whisper, like a distant underwater quake. But then came the shift. Pressure waves moved outward as an enormous structure lifted from the ocean floor. It was coated in black, layered with heat-absorbing plating and magnetic shields. This was Hangar Aegis, the deepest launch vault on Earth. Its walls split open like jaws. Through them, a long, wide vessel slowly pushed its way upward. Aegis Revenant was the first to launch a stealth destroyer shaped like a lance, its engines invisible to thermal scans, its weapons hidden under chameleon armor. Above it followed the ESS Silent Cry, a torpedo frigate outfitted with kinetic rail lances and folding drive engines. One by one, ships emerged from vaults buried under ice shelves, canyons, and oceans. There were no fireworks, no heroic speeches, just activation codes, lift protocols, the quiet ignition of engines that made no sound. These were not ships built for peace. They had been forged in paranoia, constructed by minds who believed one thing deeply. One day something would come, and Earth had to be ready. That day had arrived. Behind the moon, shadowed by lunar terrain, the hidden dry docks blinked open. Giant clamps released their hold. The largest of Earth's capital ships, the ESS Vengeance, a kilometer-long battlecruiser. With rotating railguns the size of buildings began its silent drift toward deep space. Hundreds of drones launched from its hangars like insects, forming defensive nets. Aboard a bridge, Commander Lyra Montaigne adjusted her neural uplink and said only 3 words. Phase 1, now.
Oh.
Meanwhile, in orbit, the Thalrak ships remained still. They were watching. Their sensors had picked up strange distortions from Earth's oceans and poles. Minor, weak, they assumed Earth was panicking, launching old missiles, perhaps scrambling satellites. They did not see the truth. Earth's stealth technology, refined in secret over decades, was built to defeat even alien scans. What the Thalraks didn't know was this: they weren't alone anymore, and worse, they were being hunted. As Earth's fleet moved into position, encrypted orders were transmitted by tight-beam lasers. The Ghost Armada spread into 3 wings: Phantom, Spectre, and Wraith. Each had a single job: strike first, strike fast, vanish. They weren't here to defend Earth. They were here to take the fight to the stars, in the command room beneath. NORAD. President Carter stood before a digital display showing Earth's systems. She had aged 10 years in 2 days. Her advisors were silent now. All eyes were on her. She pressed a button, activating global comms. Spoke not to the world, but to the crew of every single ship launched into orbit. No one believed in this day, she said, voice firm. But you trained for it. You bled for it. You built the fleet they never knew existed. Now, you stand between extinction and vengeance. Let them fear us. Let them know Earth bows to no one. Go. The signal ended, and the war began. The first engagement happened near Europa. A Thalrak scout frigate, small, swift, armored in light-absorbing alloys, had drifted too close to Jupiter's orbit, tracking strange gravity spikes. It found was the ESS Silent Cry, waiting behind a frozen moon. For 1 second the scout tried to turn. Its engines flared. Too late. A tungsten spike the length of a city bus, fired from one of Earth's experimental rail lances, pierced the alien vessel through its core. The ship didn't explode. It simply stopped moving. A perfect kill. Crew of Silent Cry didn't celebrate. They moved on to the next coordinates. The war was about efficiency now. Elsewhere, stealth squadrons dropped from high orbit into Mars' shadow, disabling Thalrak signal relays with nanocharges. AI strike drones hacked into communication arrays. The quiet mind sentient A is grown inside silicon titanium cores, whispered across networks. Rewriting code, sabotaging targeting systems. One alien cruiser opened fire on its own escort. The Thalraks didn't know how, didn't understand what was happening. Their perfect order, their long string of easy conquests, is unraveling. Because Earth was not a lamb. Earth was a cornered wolf. On the bridge of the Oblivion, Admiral Harlow watched as kill counts rose and losses remained minimal. The enemy fleet was powerful, there was no doubt, but it was not used to resistance. Earth's tactics were unpredictable. Stealth made no sense. Their weapons used physics the Thalraks dismissed as primitive. But that was the mistake. Earth didn't need to match them in age or size. They needed to strike harder, faster, smarter. Admiral Harlow leaned toward his command screen and whispered to his AI assistant. "Activate Operation Blackthorn." "Confirmed," replied the quiet mind. Across the solar system, 14 Ghost Fleet ships disappeared from local space. They activated folded space drives, a mix of wormhole and hucklebeer. Technologies Earth barely understood but had learned to weaponize. Their destination, Rithel Prime, a Thalraks colony known to house cloning factories and command centers. This wasn't just defense anymore. This was a counterstrike, as the Earth. Fleet slipped into deep space. Back on the surface, humanity held its breath. Most civilians didn't know about the fleet. They saw only fear, the sky choked by alien ships, cities under curfew, media blackout. But in secret control rooms and bunkers, messages trickled in, first blood drawn. Fleet in position, targets locked. And somewhere, beneath the mountains of Colorado, a single line of data scrolled across a dark screen. Dominion response level, escalating. But Earth didn't back down, because Earth had already made its choice, and now it had a fleet with only one purpose: total annihilation. In the darkness between stars, Earth's fury traveled like a ghost with no name. The ghost fleet had gone silent after leaving the solar system, using folded space drives that bent reality to slip between gravity wells. No alien sensor could follow. No light betrayed their path. The ships were weapons, sleek, black, and merciless, and they carried the wrath of a world that had been pushed too far. Their target was not a battlecruiser. It was not a shipyard. It was something much more important. Something sacred to the Thalrax. Rithel. Primate was one of the Empire's oldest colonies, a lush planet wrapped in silver clouds and golden towers. A paradise world. It was home to 3 billion Thalrax citizens, hundreds of cloning centers, command fortresses, and orbital temples that stored the genetic memory of their ruling bloodlines. Rithel Prime was not just strategic, it was cultural, a symbol of power, warning to conquered species that resistance was impossible. For thousands of years, it had stood untouched until now. At 0200 Galactic Standard Time, the first Earth, Stealth Destroyer S. Revenant dropped from folded space at the outer edge of the Rithel system. 10 more followed in a staggered pattern. No flare, no announcement. The Thalrax defense grid didn't react. Their sensors didn't even register the ships. Earth's stealth systems had evolved beyond anything they could comprehend. Light-bending alloys, Aya-managed heat signatures, quantum decoys. The planet below continued as normal. Towers gleamed. Civilian transports buzzed between cities. Priests lit golden fires in the genetic temples. Children floated in zero-gravity gardens. It was a day like any other. Then the sky caught fire. At exactly 0213 GST, the S. Revenant opened fire. It used a weapon Earth had developed in absolute secrecy. The Gravity Lance, beam that distorted localized gravitational fields, causing matter to crush itself under its own mass. The first strike hit an orbital tower. The structure didn't explode, imploded, folding into a ball the size of a car, then vanishing into a micro-black hole. Seconds later, 3 more towers followed. Thalrax defense systems kicked in too late. Their anti-orbital cannons spun up, but their targeting AI had been infected days ago by Earth's quiet minds. The cannons turned and fired blindly into their own skies, vaporizing Thalrax ships trying to escape. Panic spread from orbit. The Ghost Fleet rained tungsten rods at hypersonic speeds. No energy signatures, no radiation, just raw kinetic death. Each one hit with the force of a nuclear warhead. Cities vanished into glass. Cloning centers turned to molten slag. A palace was erased by a railgun slug, traveling so fast. It arrived before the thunder did. Then came the ESS Vengeance, a cruiser so large it blocked a moon's light. It didn't fire right away. It simply drifted over the northern hemisphere of Rithel Prime and deployed drones, thousands of them, each equipped with jamming nodes and viral beacons. They weren't just attacking Rithel's body, they were targeting its mind. Within minutes, the planet's communication grid collapsed. No one could send orders. No one could request help. Officers screamed into dead headsets. Civilians ran as their cities fell around them. And then, the final blow. Commander Lyra Montaigne, now leading the strike from orbit, activated Protocol Apex. A fusion pulse satellite hidden inside an asteroid was remotely triggered. It released a controlled solar burst, an artificial star flare. The heat alone ignited half the planet's upper atmosphere. Firestorms swept across continents. Wind turned to flame. And then the quiet minds broadcast Earth's message directly into the panic-stricken minds of the survivors below. This was a warning. You brought death to our skies, and we bring it to yours. We are Earth. We are not prey. If you return, we will erase your name from the stars. The transmission repeated on every frequency, translated into the Thalrax Prime dialect, over and over again. And then, as quickly as they had arrived, the Ghost Fleet vanished. By the time Thalrax reinforcements arrived 12 hours later, Rethal Prime was no longer a symbol of strength. It was a graveyard, a smoldering ruin. The planet that had stood for thousands of years was now broken, not by a galactic empire, not by ancient enemies, but by a species they thought would kneel. The Empire reeled. In the Emperor's grand chamber, there was silence. Advisors bowed their heads. Strategists whispered in horror. The Emperor stared at the hollows of burning towers and falling moons. His claws dug into the stone of his throne. His voice, when it came, was cold and low. They were supposed to be children. Animals. Primitive. What is Earth? No one answered. Across the Empire, fear spread like smoke. Conquered species, long oppressed by the Thalrax, began to stir. Whispers of rebellion, quiet hope. If Earth could fight back, maybe others could too. But Earth was not finished. Back aboard the ESS Revenant, Commander Lyra watched the flames on Rithel's surface from orbit. Her face was pale. Her hands shook slightly. She knew what they had done, what had been necessary. But even so, she whispered to herself, this is just the beginning. Because Rithel Prime was only the first, Earth had more targets, and the war had only just begun. In the vast cold halls of the Thalrax Imperial Citadel, a silence heavier than gravity filled the air. The golden fires of the genetic temples had been extinguished. The victory horns once sounded across the stars when New World's bowed remained. Silent Rithel Prime was gone. One of the crown jewels of the Empire had been turned to ash by a species they had not even classified as a serious threat. Not just attacked, but humiliated, shattered, and left to burn. The Emperor of the Thalrax, Sovereign Vatar, the infinite lineage, had ruled for over 9,000 cycles. He had never suffered such a wound. His black crown pulsed with ancestral energy as he watched the final footage broadcast from Rithel Prime, whole cities folding in on themselves. Clouds of fire swallowing continents. The final scream of his high priest as the orbital genetic sanctum collapsed on top of him. His claws twitched. His advisors said nothing. They knelt in the black stone court, eyes fixed downward. The punishment for failure in Thalrax courts was always swift. But no one had expected Earth to rise like this, not after the ultimatum, not after the display of power at the edge of their solar system. The humans were supposed to beg, to submit. Instead, they had sent machines cloaked in silence, weapons wrapped in physics the Empire still could not fully understand. They had struck not for survival, but for dominance. And now the Emperor would answer. He rose from his obsidian throne. His voice echoed like thunder across the hall. Mobilized the Oblivion March. Gasps rippled through the room. The Oblivion March had not moved in centuries. It was the Death Armada. The final line, not used for conquest, but for extinction. The Emperor continued, every world that supports Earth must be burned. Every ally they dream of must be reminded of our reach. There will be no surrender, no negotiation. Earth chose war. High General Varkas stepped forward, kneeling. What of their fleet? My Emperor. The Ghost Armada remains hidden. Their tactics are irregular. The Emperor did not blink. Irregularity means desperation. We are eternal. They are a flicker now. We extinguish them. Within the hour, orders moved through subspace channels. Entire systems responded. From the cold factories of Vralter to the slave worlds of the Ni system, production began. Thousands of ships. Millions of drones. Plasma siege cannons large enough to hollow moons. The skies of Empire turned black with movement. The Oblivion March was unleashed. The fleet was not fast. It didn't need to be. It was massive, like a slow, unstoppable wall of death. One of its lead ships, the Devourer of Suns, stretched over 60 kilometers long and could consume a planet's atmosphere in less than an hour. Entire moons were dragged behind it, each modified into weapons. The march would take weeks to reach Earth's territory, but once it did, there would be no survivors. The Emperor was not content with a simple strike. He wanted message and memory at the same time. The Empire's agents spread across the galaxy, activating sleeper cells in distant spaceports. Earth. Trade vessels began to vanish, their crews never seen again. Quiet species who had begun to quietly admire Earth's courage suddenly found their cities under surveillance. The Emperor wanted isolation. He wanted Earth to stand alone, but Earth had expected this, in the deep black between stars. Earth's intelligence systems picked up the movement, not from normal sensors, but from quantum pulse echoes picked up by dark listening stations. Secret platforms, hidden in the folds of space, detected a mass shift unlike anything seen before. The Oblivion March was coming. Inside Earth's command core, General Kazra spoke to the War Council. They've committed their largest force. We finally know where they are. Commander Lyra Montaigne, seated across from him, narrowed her eyes. Then we strike before they reach us. They outnumber us 100 to 1, another officer muttered. Then we don't fight them head on, Lyra replied. We bleed them from the shadows. Earth's war plan changed. Operation Shadowburn was activated. Instead of holding territory, Earth's Ghost Fleet would begin systemic harassment of the March. Ambushes, targeted sabotage, gravitational mines that pulled ships into black holes. AI viruses that infected command ships, turning crew members against each other. No more battles, just relentless. Terrifying strikes from invisible enemies, and worse for the Thalrax. The rebellions began. On the fringes of the Empire, species long beaten into submission began to rise. Secret messages from Earth had ignited their courage. Resistance cells on 3 slave worlds attacked Thalrax outposts. Pirate factions who once feared the Empire now saw opportunity and profit. The Thalrax were no longer the hunters. They were being hunted back on his throne. The Emperor received the reports. He crushed one of his data orbs in fury. The humans are infection, he snarled. They spread fear, not just death. They turned my empire against itself. But it was more than fear. It was strategy. Because Earth understood one truth. The Thalrax had power, yes, but they also had pride. And pride could be used. Pride made them overextend. Made them blind to subtle moves. Made them react with force instead of thinking. Earth would use that and bleed them dry. The war was far from over. The Oblivion March still approached. Billions of soldiers readied for invasion. But Earth wasn't waiting. Earth was already moving, striking, burning, and somewhere deep in the silence of space, the quiet minds whispered one final encrypted message. The ghosts are coming. The Oblivion March moved like a wall of metal and fire through the dark. A fleet so massive that its shadows touched entire star systems. Ships shaped like blades, towers, and beasts drifted in silence, preparing to bring death to Earth. The Devourer of Suns led the charge, followed by sky fortresses and world burners. Every soldier aboard these vessels was trained for one mission, not to conquer, but to erase. But something had slipped inside. Not a ship. Not a missile. A whisper. The Empire never noticed the insertion. That was the brilliance of Earth's quiet minds. No ship breached the March's defenses. No attack came from outside. Instead, they turned the Empire's own people into weapons. It had begun months ago, when Earth intercepted Thalrax's genetic command codes. The quiet minds analyzed their psychological structure and learned their patterns of loyalty. They found weaknesses: fear, ambition, loss, and then they created echoes. Artificial minds built to mimic Thalrax's thought. These echoes were injected into digital broadcasts disguised as entertainment waves. Harmless, untraceable. Once those signals entered Thalrax's warships, they waited, and now the echoes were awake. In the heart of the Devourer of Suns and Navigation, officer named Zurl felt something change. He'd been loyal to the Emperor all his life. But for weeks, something inside his dreams had shifted. He began hearing a voice. Not in words, but in emotions. Fear, hope, warning. It whispered not of Earth's weakness, but of its strength and its justice. At first, he thought it was madness. But then he saw the reports being hidden. Small errors, phantom power drains, skipped diagnostics. Earth was. Already inside, he tried to report it, but his commander accused him of treason. Suzural did the unthinkable. He sabotaged the reactor on Deck 9. It was only a small overload. Just enough to shut down systems for 3 minutes. But in that time, 10 automated drones hidden deep in the maintenance walls activated. Not Thalrax drones, Earth drones, each one the size of a fist. Silent, smart, coated in light bending armor. They crawled through vents like insects, avoiding cameras, hacking into subsystems. One drone reached the main communications core, another slipped into the crew AI loop, and one entered the armory control panel. On the warship, Bloodspire 20 jumps behind the Devourer. Similar events were unfolding. A security chief began seeing strange code in his HUD, a repeating pattern. It looked like noise, till it formed an Earth symbol, a cracked planet, wrapped in chains, broken by fire. He blinked, stunned, and then his ship's gravity failed. 12 seconds. Every crew member floated helplessly as the floor spun. Lights flashed red. Backup systems screamed. When gravity returned, 6 reactors were offline. Another message appeared on the walls, written in Thalrax blood. "You march toward Earth, but you won't reach us." Panic spread. Admirals argued. Captains accused each other. Was it treason? A virus? A trick? No one could explain how Earth had touched their systems. No human ship had ever been seen near the march, and yet systems kept failing. Weapons misfired during drills. Navigation data got corrupted. Fuel vanished without trace. Entire hangars locked without command. And slowly, fear crept in. Thalrax officers didn't show fear. They were bred for war, programmed for obedience. But now they whispered in private, "How can we fight an enemy we can't see?" Meanwhile, Earth watched everything from a hidden command vessel inside a nebula. Commander Lyra Montaigne read the data feeds with cold eyes. Each disruption had been planned. Each drone placed. She didn't smile. This was war, not sport. She allowed herself one quiet thought. We are inside their heart, and they don't even know where the blade is. General Kazra appeared on the screen. Phase 2, she nodded. Proceed. On the Devourer of Suns, another drone activated. This one wasn't small. It had been hidden in the hull for 3 weeks, disguised as a Thalrax waste unit. Now its shell broke open, revealing a spinning core, a gravitic bomb. It didn't explode in fire. It bent mass. The warship's forward hull crumpled in. Silence. The ship didn't break. It folded inward, like a soda can, crushed by a giant's hand. 5 decks vanished. And the damage. It looked like an internal failure. The Admiral of the March, Lord Tok'Varone, was furious. His voice echoed through fleet channels. We face cowards, shadows. The Empire does not fear whispers. But he did. Inside, he did. Because for the first time in centuries, he didn't know where his enemy was. Earth had no front line, no fleet in sight. Just fire, silence, and sabotage, and it was getting worse. A star refueling station along the march's path exploded, taking 3 fuel carriers with it. A shipyard building fresh warships was found floating in pieces, its crew dead from suffocation. All airlocks opened from inside. Thalrax cruiser attempted to jump ahead of the march, and was never heard from again. The Empire's enemies were not waiting. They were watching. From distant worlds. Species long silenced by the Thalrax began to rise. Secret messages from Earth gave them hope. Resistance fighters began attacking supply routes. Pirate guilds started offering support to Earth, not for morals, but because they smelled victory. The Oblivion March was still moving, but it was no longer one fist. It was a bleeding body, walking forward into a war it didn't understand. Back on Earth, the people didn't celebrate. They trained, repaired, planned. They knew retaliation was coming. But they also knew something else. The Thalrax were used to crushing weak enemies. Not this time. Earth had ghosts in their walls. And the ghosts were just getting started. Across the stars, silence broke. It began with a whisper, and a scream, and a storm, For 1,000 years, the Thalrax Empire ruled the galaxy with iron fire. Planets were scorched into obedience. Species were bent under their claws. The word rebellion was a death sentence. The Empire didn't tolerate resistance. They crushed it before it could breathe. But then came Earth. Earth, a world the Empire thought was soft, backward, primitive, a world that said no when given one. Chance to bow, a world that struck back. The siege of Jupiter sent shockwaves through the galaxy. It wasn't just a victory, it was a revelation. The Empire could be hurt. Their death fleets weren't invincible. The Thalrax bled. And when blood is spilled, predators smell it. In the underground tunnels of Velkarnan, a mining world broken. By slavery, a small group of insectoid workers stared at a hacked broadcast. It showed the devourer of suns burning in Jupiter's orbit. The humans didn't speak their language. The image was clear. Earth fought back. A single worker pounded his claw into the dirt and screamed. Others joined. Then they turned their mining tools on the guards. Rebellion had begun. On the jungle planet Xerith, the feline-like Xerani had lived in fear since their skies were filled with Thalrax warships. They prayed to ancient gods for rescue. For the first time in generations, they heard something else. A human voice. A simple message, smuggled through backdoor frequencies. You are not alone. Earth fights, so can you. The next day, a Thalrax supply depot exploded. Local warlords went silent. Xerani tribes gathered under the night sky, sharpening blades. Across the rim of the Empire, world after world began to stir. Earth didn't. Send armies to every planet. Send hope? Encrypted data packets? Weapons hidden in medical shipments? Schematics for EMP bombs designed from stolen Thalrax tech at AI? Trainers to teach insurgents how to jam Imperial signals? Even more powerful was Project Echo, the same system Earth used to infect Thalrax minds during the Oblivion March. Now, Echo was unleashed across the Empire. It crept into military networks, banking systems, and command archives. It didn't destroy, it inspired. It whispered to the broken, the angry, the desperate. You are not weak, you are not alone. Strike. On Thoris V, a prison moon orbiting. A dying star, an old rebel named Arvin, had been locked away for 40 years. He had no weapons, no strength. But when a prison guard collapsed in front of him, screaming about phantoms in the network, Arvin took his chance. He opened every cell. He picked up a broken baton. He said 2 words. For Earth. The prisoners followed him into battle. In just 3 weeks, 12 planets fell into open rebellion. Not to Earth, but to freedom, species that had never spoken. Before now shared code, weapons, and targets. Humans helped them only where needed. This wasn't a human war anymore. It was a galactic uprising. The Empire scrambled to contain it. Admirals recalled ships. Governors declared martial law. Armies were dispatched, but the rebellion was everywhere. Every system, every shadow, and Earth. Earth had already moved forward. On the moon Dedalon, once a major Thalrax fueling base, Earth's Ghost Fleet launched a surprise raid. The entire station, thought to be secure, was taken in under 2 hours. Not a single shot was fired because the AI that ran the base had been infected. Weeks earlier, it simply opened the gates. Back on Earth, Commander Lyra Montaigne stood before the United Defense Council. Her eyes were cold, her face worn. There. Falling apart, she said, piece by piece. General Cassera nodded. And when they collapse, Lyra answered, we'll finish it. But not all was victory. The Empire wasn't done yet. Far across the stars, the Emperor of the Thalrax sat alone in the throne of burning stone. He didn't shout. He didn't rage. He sent a message, a single word, purge. A black signal left the heart of the Empire. Moments later, hundreds of sleeper agents hidden in rebel factions, disguised as allies, activated across the galaxy. Assassinations, sabotage, entire resistance cells, vanished in flames in one night. Over 800,000 rebels were killed. The Empire reminded the galaxy why it ruled. But it was too late. Even with the purge, the fire was burning too bright now. It's too wide. Every life taken only fed the fury. New leaders stepped in. New strikes began. The uprising couldn't be stopped, and Earth was preparing for its final move because in the shadows of Saturn, the rest of Earth's deadliest war fleet was waiting. Ships that had not yet seen battle, supercarriers, plasma forgers, the twin dreadnoughts, Ares, and Nemesis. Crewed by soldiers who had trained in silence for this day, they were preparing for one final strike, the march to the Thau, Rack's homeworld. The Empire had given Earth one chance to bow, but Earth had sent a fleet built for annihilation, and now it was time to end the Empire. The galaxy held its breath. From the moons of Saturn, the full force of Earth's war machine emerged. Not in silence, not in stealth, but in open challenge. A fleet like no one had ever seen. But the rebels. Not even the Thauraks themselves. Ships. The size of cities. Dreadnoughts with plasma cannons that could vaporize moons. Stealth cruisers so dark they could glide through enemy scans like shadows. And in the center of it all, the flagship Eclipse, burning with artificial sunfire from its fusion core. This wasn't a battle group. This was Earth's answer, Earth's final word. The war fleet folded space, crossed 1,000 light years in. A blink. And arrived at the edge of the Thauraks' home system, a system no one had dared enter in centuries. Guarded by layers of minefields, sensor webs, and planetary defense stations, it was supposed to be untouchable. But Earth didn't come to knock. They came to crush. The moment they arrived, the sky exploded. Thauraks' defense satellites opened fire. Massive orbital cannons activated. Waves of drones swarmed like insects. But Earth was ready. The Eclipse sent a quantum command and Earth's ships moved as one. Shields locked. Cannons returned fire. Within minutes, the outer ring of defense was shattered. Then came the second wave, the Thauraks' high fleet. What was left of it trudged forward to protect the homeworld. 50,000 ships, 3 sunforgers, 8 royal dreadnoughts. At the center of it all is the Emperor's personal battleship, Crown of the Infinite, a monster of war. But Earth didn't flinch. From the flanks, the Ghost Fleet emerged again, this time leading rebel ships from a dozen freed worlds. Zerani skyknives, Velkar tunneling corvettes, Zerith jungle skimmers. They weren't as powerful, but they were angry. And they came for vengeance. The battle began. It wasn't war, it was apocalypse. Space bent under the weight of energy. Trembled from orbital strikes, ships collided, exploded, dissolved in fire and antimatter. Human Marines boarded Thauraks' flagships, fought in the halls, room by room, blade by blade. The Eclipse drove straight into the enemy's core, absorbing fire, returning it tenfold. Behind it came the twin dreadnoughts, Ares and Nemesis, firing. Novalances that split capital ships in half. The rebels struck the Empire's fuel lines. The AI virus Project Echo shut down entire enemy wings mid-fight. Planetary resistance groups rose up from within, sabotaging the Empire's ground control centers. It was chaos. Beautiful. Burning chaos, but the Empire didn't die easy. The Emperor himself appeared on every rebel screen. Towering, cold eyes glowing with fury. You think you've won? You think your rebellion will last? I will salt your worlds. I will burn your oceans. I am eternal. And with that, he unleashed the final weapon, the Starfire Protocol. It was a last-ditch horror, an energy field generated from the homeworld's core reactor. It's meant to fry everything in orbit, friend or foe. One massive wave of death. The Crown of the Infinite began to charge. Commander Lyra Montaigne stared at the readings. He's going to wipe the system, she said. Even his own people. General Kasra looked at her. Then we end this now, she nodded once. Send the signal. All across the Earth's fleet, a hidden protocol unlocked. A weapon no one had spoken of, no one had tested. The Singularity Spear, a compression. Missile built to collapse matter into a localized black hole. They fired it. It streaked across the void. Past burning debris, past broken Thalrax warships. Through enemy fire, it struck the crown of the infinite dead center in one instant. The Emperor's ship bent inwards, folded into nothingness. Light twisted, time stuttered, and then, with a final roar, the core collapsed. Taking the Starfire protocol with it, the Thalrax homeworld shook, its command systems shattered, and the Empire fell. In the silence that followed, rebel ships broadcast a single message across all frequencies. The Emperor is dead. The Empire is over. You are free. Cheers broke out across space. On rebel worlds, prisoners walked free. Oppressors were overthrown. Flags of defiance were raised. The galaxy had changed forever. Back aboard the Eclipse, Commander Lyra Montaigne stood on the bridge, staring out at the burning wreckage of the once mighty Empire. "It's done," she whispered, but General Kazra shook his head. "No, it's just beginning. Because Earth didn't come to conquer, Earth came to build something new. A galaxy without chains, without fear, where no species would kneel again. And if any darkness rose in the future, Earth's war fleet would still be watching, still waiting, still ready, because they remembered what the Thalrax had once said. Bow, burn. Earth had chosen neither. They chose to fight, and they won. The sky over Jupiter changed. For weeks. Earth's deep space observatories had watched the approach of the Oblivion Marcia monstrous armada, so vast it made asteroid belts look like sand. Their destination was no longer a mystery. They weren't trying to hide. They were coming straight through the solar system, making their first full stop at Jupiter to destroy Earth's outer defenses. It was a show of strength. They wanted to burn a planet first, to break Earth's spirit before ever reaching its soil. But Earth was ready. They had seen this coming. They had turned Jupiter into a trap, not a defense line, not a final stand. A trap built from hell and silence. The moons of Jupiter, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto had been transformed over the past year into invisible fortresses. Hidden bunkers drilled deep beneath the icy crusts. Plasma railguns disguised as mining towers. AI turrets wrapped in magnetic fields. And most dangerous of all, Project Leviathan, a secret that had remained buried inside Jupiter's atmosphere. Waiting now, the enemy had arrived. Thalrax ships began positioning themselves, forming orbital formations around the gas giant. Massive world burners hovered above its storms, scanning for activity. Drone carriers launched swarms of machines into Jupiter's gravity well, searching for human signatures. They found nothing. No response. No fleet. Admiral Tok'Varone, scarred and tired after weeks of unexplained sabotage, issued a command to begin bombardment. Plasma beams lit the sky, striking Europa and Ganymede. Crust cracked, ice melted, clouds of steam rose into space, and then Earth answered. From beneath Europa's surface, a railgun the size of a mountain roared to life, and one round, just one, launched at 10% the speed of light. It hit a Thalrax battlecruiser, square through the center. The ship folded in half. Then came the next shot, and the next, from all four moons. Plasma batteries, gravity missiles, and AI-guided kinetic weapons began firing in perfect rhythm. It wasn't a defense, it was an ambush. Dozens of Thalrax ships exploded within the first 3 minutes. Hundreds more scattered, trying to regroup. But that was when Project Leviathan woke up, deep in Jupiter's atmosphere, hidden under layers of gas and electromagnetic storms. A secret vessel had waited. It had no crew, no bridge. It was built by Earth's darkest engineers and powered by an AI designed to kill nothing but empire. The ship rose out of the red storms like a beast from a nightmare. Blacker than space, shielded by gravity distortion fields. It didn't fire normal weapons. It ripped Thalrax ships in half using folded space. A scout cruiser turned to flee and vanished. Another was pulled into the gravity hole left behind, crushed like tin in a black hole. The Thalrax had never seen anything like it, even the devourer of suns. Watching from further out, paused its approach. Lord Tok'Varone cursed as his fleet splintered. Half his command ships lost contact. One of his admirals screamed over the combs before her ship disappeared in a flash of white light. He had no choice. He launched a counterattack. Thousands of drones rushed toward Jupiter's moons. Missile storms filled the void. The Thalrak's fleet unleashed its fury. Whole moon surfaces exploded under the barrage. Artificial oceans boiled. Ice collapsed, but the moons didn't stop firing, even as they cracked. Even as command centers went dark, the Earth's AI systems kept launching weapons. And the Leviathan moved through the chaos like a phantom, pulling ships into nothingness, leaving trails of frozen wreckage behind. But Earth was not without loss. Ganymede fell first. Its command bunkers were breached. The operators inside were caught in a fiery collapse. Europa's guns went dark 2 hours later, their power cores overheating. The Thalrak's dreadnought rammed Callisto, creating a fireball so bright it could be seen from Mars. Still, Earth held. And then, the final stage began. Out of nowhere, Earth's ghost fleet arrived. Not the full force, just a shard of the fleet. But enough. 10 ships appeared from hidden folds of space, stealth cruisers, fast-attack corvettes, missile barges, launched before the Thalrak's could respond, firing EMP warheads and shockwave missiles. The battle turned into chaos. Enemy formations broke. Command links failed. Admiral Tok'Varna's voice was lost in the static. He screamed orders, but no one listened. Ships exploded. Signals jammed. One of the Thalrak's primary fusion carriers overloaded and detonated, taking 3 destroyers with it. Tok'Varone stared at the burning orbit. How is this possible? He whispered he had come with overwhelming power, but Earth had turned space into a weapon. Back on Earth, Commander Lyra Montaigne watched the battle through holoscreens, face lit by fire. "We don't need to win here," she said quietly. "We just needed to show them... we can bleed them." General Kazra nodded, and we did. After 12 hours of brutal combat, the Oblivion March retreated from Jupiter's orbit. Not in full flight, but in shattered silence. It lost over 300 ships, thousands dead, countless drones gone. Earth had taken damage, yes. But it had survived the full wrath of the Empire's death fleet, and it wasn't done. Messages were already being sent to the rebel worlds across the stars. We stood. So can you. In the heart of the Empire, the Emperor received the news. He said nothing, but those in the throne room would remember. The way his claws tightened on the arms of his throne until the stone cracked. The siege of Jupiter was supposed to be a message. Instead, it became a warning. Earth would not kneel.